How to achieve such a level of realism when the line between computer graphics and reality disappears and everyone around you takes your graphic as a real footage captured on the camera. In this video I'm going to show you how I did this in Blender. And if you think it's too hard for you, watch this video till the end and you will see how it's easy to turn your animation into realistic video. My goal was to make a video animation like it was captured on a smartphone, but before I will show you how to make it in Blender, let's talk a little bit about Blender scene and optimization, because it's pretty huge scene and without optimization it's hard to do something. So this is my main ground surface and I also have built in 3D models some trees around. Also found the background mountain in Blender kit, and for the foreground detalization I have a wood fence and road. For the ground surface I have drawn here several vertex groups for different grass and trees groups which I used in geoscatter, so we may see trees and foreground grass. I hide all the scatters from viewport because it's pretty hard for viewport to show all these details, but we may see other tree groups scattered by using vertex groups. Also grass, background and foreground. I separated everything by background and foreground groups for the scene optimization. The main goal of optimization in a huge scene is gradually reduce the density of scatters from the camera to the background. We need more grass in the foreground to see details and reduce these detalizations and far from the camera they placed. This logic will work for the whole scene. In the foreground we need highly detailed objects and maybe displacement if it's necessary, but don't need all this in some places at the far distance from the camera. So, as you may see, this foreground grass has a pretty huge density, since we see this part in the camera much clearer, but the background grass already has less density. Also, for realistic results, I used wind animation for some tall grass. I enabled turbulence, just not too much. If I play the animation, we may see some wind animation on this grass. I also used camera optimization in geoscatter. First, I use vertex group for areas where I need grass and trees, and secondly, I have additional optimization for the camera, so all scatters will be visible only in the camera frame and direction. Since my video starts by showing the ground and some road, I need high quality mesh here. I use a 3D scan of wooden fence here and I'm going to use displacement on this road. If I enable preview render we may see rocks here, and this surface has a pretty huge density mesh, especially this is visible if we compare it with another ground surface. I didn't use displacement there since it will be covered by grass. Here I also have a lot of grass with wind animation. It's also necessary just for the foreground. When doing video animation, especially when the camera also moving like in this scene, the main advice about optimization is to simplify everything as much as possible, just keep the good quality. It relates also to textures. Usually I use Simplify in Blender and use a texture limit of 4K, but in this case, as I said, the camera moves and it's going to be 1080p resolution, I can use a limit of 2K even for foreground objects. But anyways, optimization is so important, especially if we are doing animation. Alright, when we clarified that, let's make an animation. So I hide everything from this scene, leave only these main objects to orientate in space. And let's work with the camera, because all the secret of realistic video animation are here. First, we need to animate our camera. I also use local orientation, which will help to rotate the camera by axis. So I choose my start point. enable auto keying. In this case, when I rotate the camera, Blender set keys for animation automatically. So we will start with animation with the rising of the camera. I need to rotate the camera by x-axis to see the rod, some kind of like this. Okay, move the playhead and rise the camera. Also, we can use another axis to get natural movement of the camera. Our goal is to imitate realistic behavior when we use a camera to try to capture something. Move playhead and again rotate the camera. Maybe I return to the key points and I want this fence will cover the whole frame, like this. Move playhead and now my camera will move a little bit slower than in the beginning. So we rise the camera and start capturing the panorama. I even maybe disable the preview render so it will work faster in the viewport. Move the playhead and rotate the camera and also rotate by other axis to imitate like we make a video by hand without any tripods. Move the camera back. And the final frame my camera will move too slowly to show the landscape. Again, rotating using other axis brings more natural movement. And finish our video somewhere here. Play from the first frame. Yeah. Since we try to imitate how we make video by hand, for more natural movement we need to add some shaking to imitate the camera shaking like we make in this video with our hand. Despite almost modern cameras and smartphones having stabilization, it's not like a frozen image. Stabilization makes your video smoother and stabilizes the frame a little bit, but it still saves small movements. It's not like completely freeze frame. So, to make this shake I open Graph Editor and in Y-axis we can add noise filter. Just with a small noise effect. It will add such smooth movements as we were shooting video from our hands. Like we take a phone and try moving the camera to observe the scene, trying to show what we saw. So just remember how you usually move your smartphone when capturing the video and recreate this in a Blender. So good, and let's pick the hero frame to make a test render. Maybe this one would be great. I also open some objects in this scene. I also need to enable the depth render layer and the noise data before doing test render. Waiting for the render and go to Composting because here we must add another important thing to achieve maximum realism. Because it's not enough just to imitate how we make a video by hand, it's also need to imitate the camera. And first of all, I need lens distortion. Lens distortion allows us to imitate the wide angle of the camera lens. I use a 24mm focal length camera in this scene, which is not only related to standard smartphone cameras, it's also considered as a wide-angle lens for the camera, and if you have ever used a real mirrorless or DSLR camera with a wide-angle lens, should know that such a lens is displayed in the distortion of the image along the edges of the frame, and the smaller the value of the lens, the more this distortion we may see on the video. and we add lens distortion. Not too much, just a little bit, because lens distortion is a physically correct effect and we can't avoid such post effects if we want to achieve realism. Also, we can use chromatic effects, but usually these effects algorithms remove well, and in this case I don't want to use this, but keeping in mind that also works on realistic images well. As you remember, I saved the depth render layer, and now we can use this. I add map range node and connect this node depth, but from the noise data. Let's select some depth range to cover the mountain and some part of the forest. Maybe like this. And to use this information I need mix color node added to the render. Use this map range as a factor. Just clamp it. And changing the blending mode to screen, let's set some color. Maybe some bluish color like air perspective, you know. It's really far away from the camera and this air perspective will be visible pretty clearly. It brings even more depth to the scene, but using compositing and without any volume fog. Also, we may do some color correction here. I will be using DaVinci Resolve for final post-production, but if you want to use only Blender, it's possible to make some color corrections here in compositing. I can use hue correct for color correction, for instance, rising a little bit of yellow color. Also blue color. Not too much, just to emphasize color details. Also, I often use RGB curves. I would say all these nodes also works in your camera with algorithms. You do not notice that because it's happened on the fly. In Blender we also can add sharpness. It's a good way to emphasize details, especially if you don't want to use any software after compositing and want to use only Blender. Finally, I add color balance and make the light warmer. So, these are final adjustments here, which will be applied to the final render, before and after. If you prefer use only Blender, you may stay with that and make a final animation. I'm going to use DaVinci Resolve, as I said, for color grading. This program has more powerful tools to do this. But how we can save animation in Blender? The first way is to go to Output and choose the proper path to the folder where you want to save your video. But here's important things to save the animation correctly. Remember this and do it right. We never use video format available for saving video. Never. Especially if you want to do some color grading or other manipulation after rendering. Use image sequence, PNG or EXR format for that. Another way to save animation is using compositing. Add the file output node and connect to this node the whole compositing line. This node has the same settings as the Blender output. Here we can also choose a path and format. If you wanna save all render layers like depths for walking, you have to choose EXR multilayer format and connect all these layers to the output node. I've already done with this footage and I need only PNG sequence for color grading in DaVinci Resolve, so I save everything here. Why do we use image sequence instead to saving everything directly to the video format? First of all, it's quality. PNG image saves much more information for color grading And second, when you bump into with animation rendering, you definitely will have some problem with the render. Most commonly the Blender just crashed unexpectedly and you will start the render from the first frame again. In the case of sequence rendering, you will simply resume the rendering from where the problem occurred and not lose the already saved materials. Alright, what settings we can use to render animation in Blender? First, go to Settings and enable persistent data. If it's enabled, the Blender will never upload data for rendering for each frame. Blender will do this one time for the first frame and will use this uploaded data for the whole timeline. It significantly saves render time. Remember about Simplify, I use 2K textures limit here. Also, to get realistic video we need motion blur. If we look at the first frame, this is just one frame from the whole video, we may see some blurred effect. And if we look at some video footage, we also may see the same effect. Since our camera moves and captures video, the one static frame will be blurred. The faster the camera moves, then more visible the motion blur will be. This effect you must add as a lens distortion if you want to get realistic shot. So to find the right value for motion blur, set the frame where the camera has the most moments. Do the render to see how motion blur works and adjust settings if it's necessary. And finally, about samples. In this approach, when the camera moves in this scene, we can ignore some details and even reduce the quality of the render. In other words, if you use 400 samples for static render, in this case it's possible to reduce to 128 or even 64 or even less, make a small test to find the right way. But it's definitely not necessary to do the same for animation video as you do for static images. Because we have dynamic and our viewers will not see each frame separately, but will see 30 or 60 frames per second. Just keep the balance between quality and noise, it still must be a clean image. So, I save my animation and open DaVinci Resolve. This is my sequence. Select everything and drop it into the media pool in DaVinci Resolve. By the way, DaVinci Resolve understands that it's an image sequence and automatically gathers all images into video. Not even video, it's still a PNG file, but we can play this animation as a video here. Yeah, it looks awesome. A little bit noisy here, but it's not a problem for us. But anyway, even if you use the noise in Blender, it will make some noise in animation. It happens due to the noise works for each frame separately, and even if we look at the one image, it's clear. But since the noise impacts each frame individually, when the whole images are combined into one video, we will have some unpleasant noise. It's even not a noise, it's a difference between each frames, you know. So, I'm going to use the noise in this node and see the scopes how it works. See the difference. The waves in the scopes become sharper. Always look at the scopes, don't trust your eyes, because scopes displays more information than you can see and they will never fail you. So I press Alt-S to add another node here, and let's make some small color adjustments. Despite we did color correction in the Blender, I still want to exaggerate yellow a little bit to make it even more attractive, like HDR effect in the camera. Choose green and pull a little bit down. See the difference here in the shadow. Before and after. Maybe do some for these red roofs to make them more noticeable. Also, I don't like this sky now, but if I choose blue here, it will not work. It just impacts somewhere here on the mountains, but not on the sky. And that's why DaVinci Resolve is good for color grading, because I can use qualifier. I just pick the sky and DaVinci selects the whole sky range. Maybe move this one to remove some parts on the mountain. And use this mask, I can work with sky separately from other colors. For example, boost color. I want to see here a nice blue sky. Maybe use gamma to make it much deeper color. So see how it looks now. That's why DaVinci Resolve, because in Blender it's almost impossible to select the sky. You need to use masks and Cryptomate, but in DaVinci Resolve just pick with qualifier and that's it. Finally, I add another node to make final grading. Just keep watching the scopes. Everything that you do here must be within the available range. If I exaggerate a lot of gain, we may see that the waves hit the top border of the color range, and it's not good because we may see that on the image like unpleasant highlights. It's not correct, we must stay between the bottom and top sides. Alright, I guess we finish here. Small summarize how to achieve realistic video. We animated the camera, recreated real actions when shooting with hands, we added noise to add shaking effects, we used lens distortion to distort and imitate the camera lens, if we used wide angle value for the lens, don't forget about post-processing and depth of frame. Also, motion blur makes the video smoother and more realistic. And of course do not forget about optimization of the scene. It's very important if you don't want your Blender to crash every frame while rendering. So, thank you for watching my video, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like to this video and share it with your friend. Also, if you wanna support my channel and get exclusive content, you may subscribe to my Patreon. So, see you next time!